Hello, everybody, and welcome to my Clowncast. I am Clayton V. And like you, I was raised by Hollywood, and they taught me that a Navy SEAL can take down an entire army with a kitchen knife. And now that might seem suspect to some of you, but I want to get to the bottom of it. So I've decided to have a conversation with a real Navy SEAL, Mr. Tom Black. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing just peachy.
So, first of all, when did you serve in the Navy SEALs?
I served from April 17th of 1990 to October 19th of 2004.
And how much nonsense exists that's like in the movies when it comes to the Navy SEALs? Like, how much of it is legit and how much of it is just straight up, that's ridiculous?
It depends on the movie, and there are some movies that are better than others. I don't know if I'm allowed to say movies here. Can I? Okay. Well, there's like the first Navy SEAL movie, with Charlie Sheen and the things like that. That was just kind of craziness. The parachute jump, the other things. I mean, one guy just barely makes it to the water before he pulls his chute. Well, these other guys would be under canopy, miles and miles away. Not to mention we were back in the United States, and now they're in Syria, and now they're back in the United States, and now they're in Syria. I mean, the whole aircraft transfer of people going back and forth, and the chain of command going up and down, it just never would happen in that timeline. But those are just little things. If you can, like, weapons and tactics and mission and things like that. There was another one that Bruce Willis did, Tears of the Sun, where it was they had to extract like one person or whatever. I think it was one person or two people, and they ended up taking this whole village, and he got a bunch of his guys killed, and then he ended up dying and all this stuff. No. I mean, the chick was there. It's been forever since I've seen it, so I don't exactly remember the entire storyline, but I remember being pissed when I did see it because, she was like, well, I'm not going to go without my village. Well, bang, throw over your shoulder like, yes, you are. You've got orders. That's the whole thing. Orders are orders. They're not recommendations. You follow your orders and do this and do that, and then you're going to be good to go.
Okay, and so now the Steven Seagal is the most infamous one. So can you build bombs in a kitchen? Like this whole being a cook and killing everybody in an army?
Well, first of all, we don't have a SEAL magnaphone, whatever the hell kind of radio that is, in the lifeboat of on every battleship that we have. And unless you were an MS, a stew is what we call them in the Navy, but unless you were an MS, you wouldn't just be a cook. You don't go to be a cook because you punched out your CO. You go to prison, or you go to the brig, or you get an NJP or whatever. You don't go to be a cook on a ship, especially as a chief. The whole crossing your arms like this and just flying those out, flying those bullets out with the MP5s, that's just not going to happen. And the unlimited magazine space in those movie weapons is just absolutely nonsensical.
All right, so when I was in college, I had a roommate in the dorms who said that when he was in the Navy, that is where the party is at in terms of armed services. Is that really what it is on those ships? Is it really like floating parties?
No.
No?
I have no idea what ships are like in port.
Uh-huh.
Maybe that's the way it is. But if you're in port, you want to spend as little time on board the ship as possible.
Right.
When you're at sea, there's none of that. It is work for ship's crew.
Right.
Usually they have 12-hour shifts. You've got a group of people work from 7 in the morning to 7 at night, and then you've got a whole nother different group of people work from 7 at night to 7 in the morning. And then they have the ship's board television, which has we call it AFARS, the Armed Forces Radio Television Network Service. And then they would show one program, one set of programs from 7 in the morning to 7 at night, and they would show the same set of programs from 7 at night to 7 in the morning. So everybody got to watch the same program, and then it would just change over the next day.
Okay, and
But there was no parties. It's all about work.
all right, and now they're like floating cities, like those fleets, right? They have like everything in them.
It depends on the boat you're on. The larger the ship, when I deployed in '94 on the George Washington, and I mean our platoon deployed on there. I think at one time we had like 7,000 people on board the ship, but that was an aircraft carrier,
Right.
And it was all Navy with the exception of a little bit. We had a Marine Corps detachment on there. I don't know how many people there were, 50 guys. But on the smaller ships, like an LPD, I was on the Trenton, which was an LPD, and that had about 600 Marines and about 300 Navy. And if anybody's doing a fact check on me or something like that, you can go ahead. And I don't remember everything exactly, but it was about that because it was a Marine launcher. They'd drop the gate, and all the Marines would go out doing their Marine thing.
Right.
So the Navy crew on board that boat was, you only had to do A, B, and C, so you didn't need all these people like you would on an aircraft carrier or on an LPH or anything like that.
Okay.
But as far as parties go, no, the only parties you have are off the ship, not on the ship. You don't have a cake, you don't have the things like that. You don't, nothing.
None of that. All right. So I wrote down some other questions. Okay, so the SEALs started out as two different organizations. There were the U-boat hunters in World War II, right?
The what?
Weren't there like the people in the Pacific that disarmed mines? I watched a documentary, and they said that there were two different groups. That there were the sea mine guys, the frogmen who disarmed sea mines, and then there were the U-boat hunters, and then they joined these two organizations together to make the SEALs. What's the history of that?
Okay, you're going to have to get with an actual naval historian.
Oh, okay.
But for me to just throw out, I wish you could have prepped me a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
No. But the first ones, I think they started in 1943, and they were called the Scouts and Raiders. Mm-hmm. And what they would do is they would clear the obstacles. Enemies would put big metal triangle things like that. They called them Jap scullies or other things or other obstacles. And they would clear those for the Marines to come in and do a landing, because if they came in on their boats, they would get hung up on these things, and then the Marines would fall off the side or drown, or they would just sit there and get shot at or anything like that. And so they would go in usually the night before or whatever, and then take care of them with explosives and blow up all the obstacles and have them sink to the bottom of the floor. And that's what really started it was called the Scouts and Raiders in World War II. After that, it became the underwater demolition teams. And once again, you're going to have to get your fact checkers on that are going, Google.
Right.
So then it was UDTs, then it was underwater demolition teams. And those went, and those still were going strong. But then in 1962, January 1st, Navy SEAL birthday, January 1st of 1962, President John F. Kennedy started the Navy SEALs, Center for Sea, Air, and Land. And they had SEAL Team 1 on the West Coast and SEAL Team 2 on the East Coast. Now, they still had all these UDT teams. And so what you would have is, as we went into the Vietnam War, then you had UDT Team 21, or you had SEAL Team 1 or SEAL Team 2 or UDT Team whatever. And then as you go further on in the 70s and in the 80s, the UDT teams were phased out. Now you had less UDT teams on the West Coast, so now you had SEAL Team 1 and SEAL Team 3 on the West Coast. Then you had SEAL Team 2 and SEAL Team 4 on the East Coast. And then you had more and more and more, and I think the last UDT team was UDT 21, and that ended up being SEAL Team 5. I don't know. But it was about 1985 was the last UDT team.
Okay.
It was just UDT. But now we've got, and forever there was SEAL Team 1, 3, and 5 on the West Coast, and then SEAL Team 2, 4, and 8 on the East Coast. And then, of course, everybody knows the whole Dick Marcinko starting SEAL Team 6, and which later turned into Naval Special Warfare Development Group.
And how many total SEAL teams are there?
Well, see, there's the rub. So now we had additional ones.
Right.
There was there was SAFRA on the East Coast. So we had SEAL Team 2, 4, and SEAL Team 2, SEAL Team 4, and SEAL Team 8. So now you had 3 teams, and each team had 8 platoons. A platoon of SEALs is about 16 guys, depending on what year. During the whole Clinton years, it was the whole do more with less.
Right.
And so I actually had a platoon with 14 guys, and then I had platoons with 17 guys. It just depends.
Okay.
So anyway, so now we had 3 teams of 8 platoons each, which was a total of 24 teams. And then they decided to add another team to each coast. So now you had SEAL Team 2, SEAL Team 4, SEAL Team 8, and SEAL Team 10. And what they did is so now instead of 3 teams with 8 platoons each, they had 4 teams with 6 platoons each. And it's still 24 platoons. So this was sold as a zero-sum game. It's just it's the same, everything's the same. Well, one of the reasons, I'm not saying the only reason, but one of the reasons is somebody dropped the ball along the way as far as manpower goes. So in 1991 or 1992, once again, there you go, fact checkers, we were 600% manned with ensigns, with O1s, just in the SEAL teams. So we had all these ensigns just in the SEAL teams. Well, what happens when you're an ensign and you go through BUDS and now you get to the team and you're a Lieutenant JG and you do a platoon as a junior officer, and then you do a platoon as a senior officer, as a full lieutenant. And usually after that, then you go to operations or training or become a lieutenant commander or a task unit or an executive officer or whatever, and then you become a CO, depending on how your career path goes. But because we had all these ensigns, we had nowhere to put them. You only get one senior officer and one junior officer in a platoon. Mm-hmm. So now we've got all these officers. So
do they go to the Coast Guard or something? What did you do with extra SEALs?
Well, this is exactly what you do. Well, no, not just extra SEALs, extra officers.
Oh, right.
Because you're only allowed 2 per platoon. So they're like, well, I tell you what, we'll just make more platoons and more teams, because each team you have to have an intel officer and a training officer and an executive officer and a commanding officer and all these other officer spots. So not just do we have 24 platoons across the board with 3 teams of 8 platoons or 4 teams with 6 platoons. Now you've got all these officers filling all these other billets. And that's one reason why they did that. Another thing was that they had different platoons going to different ways. Now remember, I retired in 2004, and a lot of things have changed since then. They started SEAL Team 10. They were actually driving in the pillars to start SEAL Team 10 as I was retiring, and then SEAL Team 7 out on the West Coast.
All right. And so now, when it comes to when you deploy, what is your setup? Like, what do you walk out into the world with for your protection?
God, for your protection. You mean like what do we deploy with? What does a SEAL platoon deploy with?
Yeah, like what does your general kit consist of?
You mean like what we wear?
Yeah, or like what are you prepared? Like if you were, like, let's say you had to go tomorrow, what would you suit up with right now to go?
It depended on the mission.
Oh.
And you had bags. You had a kit bag for each, the big green bag. Anyway, we call it a kit bag.
Right.
And so each bag I had a bag for shipboarding. I had a bag for combat swimmer. I had a bag for land warfare. I had my sniper bag. I had my breacher bag. I had a shipboarding bag. I had whatever. You have all these bags, and your locker at your SEAL team wasn't just like, your little school locker. I mean, it was like, we called them cages. They were like 4 foot by 6 foot cages, and they were, 12 feet tall, give or take, and you just put all your stuff in there because you've got boots for this and boots for that and boots for this. You don't get like a pair of boots. You get like, 6 or 7 pairs of boots, and you put those in there, and those are there, and these boots are for this and those boots are for that, and everything. These sets of camis are for this, and those sets of camis are for that, and these fins are for this, and these fins for that, and yeah.
On average, before you go out and do any individual mission, how many times do you practice it before you go and do it?
Oh, good Lord. A lot. But because we have to, before you deploy, your officer gets this list, give or take, and you have to do all these things on this list. So you have to do, for air ops, you have to do static line jumping, and you have to do free fall jumping, you have to do night jumping, you have to do combat equipment jumping, you have to do spy rig, you have to do fast rope, you have to do rappelling, you have to do all these things for air ups. Okay, now moving on, and you do that over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Okay, boom, that block of training is done. Now we're going to do combat swimmer. So now you do combat swimmer, and you do body breathing, mash clearing, pace line, ship attack, ship attack, ship attack, ship attack, ship attack for like 3-4 weeks. Okay, boom, now that block of training is over. So now you can, I mean, shit, it's I don't know, 20 years, I guess, and I bet I could still put on a rig and swim 100 yards in 3 minutes. It's just so ingrained in you that's what you do. And jumping or shooting or anything like that, you go into land warfare, shoot, move, and communicate. You go into shipboarding. It's the same thing. You do it so many times, and after you complete all this list of jungle warfare and winter warfare and desert warfare and shipboarding and all these things, then you're ready to deploy. And that list takes about 12 to 14 months to complete.
So you just said jungle warfare, sea warfare, winter. Which one's the toughest one? The winter, jungle, mountains. What?
Each one is tough. You go to the jungle warfare, and we're stationed in Virginia Beach. We really can't do jungle warfare in Virginia Beach. So you get a group of guys from SEAL Team 4 from training because they're the jungle warfare experts. Mm-hmm. And then they'll take you guys, your platoon, down to Panama. They used to. And then they would say, okay, well, don't touch this, don't touch that. And that was pretty much the thing, don't touch this, don't touch that, because all this stuff will kill you. So pretty much you wear gloves on everything, and then you try, and you're just sweating, and there's nothing you can do because you can't really take any clothes off. So all your clothes are just wet from sweat, not from the ocean or anything like that. From sweat. That was that difficulty. Of course, winter warfare, you're just freezing. And the hardest part about winter warfare is trying to pull 1 inch of dick out of 2 inches of clothing, to take a piss. And that's all, it's just cold. Your bullets function different. You have to use different types of lubricant on your weapon. Same with desert warfare. You can't put a whole bunch of lube on your weapon because then all the sand will collect on that lube, and then your gun will seize up. And so you use graphite instead of like CLP. But each block is different. CQB sometimes can be taxing at times. It's like, okay, let's do another run, and then shipboarding is another one. Shoulders are just shot. I mean, you've got that caving ladder that you're climbing up, and it's not that you're climbing up, but you've got all your gear on. Right. And if you're a breacher, you've got a hula tool, or you've got a sledgehammer, or you've got a quickie saw, or whatever else you have. I mean, you've got all that stuff. So every block of training has its own challenges and rewards.
Do you have a specific brand of firearm that you prefer?
I'm kind of old school. It depends on what I'm doing. I like the Glock 17s. I like the 1911 45s, and I like the M4s. It just depended on what you were doing. Yeah, it just depended. And of course the mission. If you're going to shoot out of helos, you don't want, it's okay to have an M4, but there's just different weapons that you can have.
Mm-hmm. And so everybody understands what the noise is. What's your dog's name?
His name is Loki.
And what kind of dog is he?
He's a husky mix. He came from the shelter. Good God, of all the times you want to play is right now.
No, it's fine. We've been talking for like 20 minutes. I think he's done with it.
Go ahead, fix that. Oh, you didn't need that?
No, we're good. Well, listen, right. I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with me today, and I want to thank Loki.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's fine. Okay. It's fine.
No
like
problem
I said, we got 20 minutes. That's fine. I appreciate you taking the time, sir. Thank you very much.
I'm glad you could come.